I will put the next three or four questions together because they impinge on similar things. One is of course, how are you going to be able to improve accountability? How will you tackle the issue of corruption? How will the government ensure quality in implementation? And also that how are you going to make sure that it reaches? I mean, some of it you have answered. How is it you're going to make sure that your final, what you're spending, reaches a much greater percentage of the people?
Yeah, so I think again, we're all we play the cards we're dealt. I'm 26 in the seniority, but finance is a very powerful thing. So in that sense, I've already announced two major changes in the budget, and there are others that will come as we get into the demand for grants. I still got to present my demands for the finance department, for the HR department, which will be relevant to this. But the two that we've already announced is that we want to first get basic audit right. Right now, many departments audit themselves, completely unknown to any reasonable organizational design. A department can audit itself. In the case of HRNC, the Honorable Court, Madras High Court, has already pointed out that they have an individual who was actually the subject of an audit report when he was a joint commissioner or some level lower, executive officer. And then by the time the audit came for actual action, he was sitting on top of the audit bureau within the department. So he was auditing himself, or basically taking action on himself. So, this has to stop. And at various times, at various places, we have this kind of, assembled by committee, as they say, like a hodgepodge nature of audit. For example, in the finance department, we have one audit called milk audit, completely separate audit called local fund audit, completely separate audit called cooperatives audit, and then something called state audit or something. But, everywhere else in the world, audit is audit, right? The milk audit is not going and actually checking the cow. The milk audit is checking Arvind's accounts. So we have already announced a plan that we're going to, remove all audit functions from their own self-audit, bring it into an integrated unit under the finance department called the Director General of Audit, and eventually homogenize and professionalize all these different auditors so that there's much less chance of collusion and inbreeding and unwanted relationships developing. So I think there's a lot of room to improve the audit functions. And were we to do that, we wouldn't have so many problems with the CAG, because right now the CAG is the only real audit and many of the local audits don't work. I think there's a component of actually increased transparency and data tracking, which is probably even more powerful. We already have, for the first time, this IFHRMS, Integrated Finance Department's Finance and HR Management System, where every employee's pay records, but also service records are now integrated. This was a big improvement. And I give credit to whoever started it before we came to office. But we're going to ramp that up in a significant way. And there are significant transactions that happen outside of the purview of the government. I don't want to give away too much, but let's say huge amount of money gets shifted to accounts that are not visible to the consolidated fund computers of the government of Tamil Nadu. And then nobody knows what happens. It may be corruption, it may be inefficiency, it may be parked and left for life. You talk to any IAS officer or any government employee, you can tell how many accounts are opened and left with funds and then forgotten. So we want to ensure that no transactions can happen without oversight or without immediate data recording in a system that we can see. Now, when I say we can see this, let me put a definition of what we can see. I should be able to sit at my desk and tap a button and be able to see it. I, the minister, should be able to see it. That's what a system really gives functionality. The commercial tax minister should be able to sit at his desk and tap a button and see the petrol sales pattern for the dates that I had to spend 4 days and bring 8 people involved to decide, to find out what happened. So this information should be the basis for decision making and monitoring and adjusting policy, which means it should be real time and available. If we do these two things as a kind of carrot to achieve this, I have also announced in the budget itself that this process of having every file come to finance is just ridiculous. It's, we have already allocated the budget. Why should I then keep micromanaging to every single thing? I've been minister for less than 3.5 months. I think almost 800 or 900 files have come to me for signature. It is ridiculous. Some files are worth 2,000 crores, some files are worth 5,000 crores, some files are worth 3 lakhs, some files are worth 5 lakhs. It makes no sense that a finance minister of a state that has a 3,29,000 crore budget should be processing files worth 2 lakhs and 3 lakhs. It's just humanly impossible. So we have said in the budget that once everything is online and we have clear line of sight, every transaction should be visible were I to tap a function, and 100% of the audit control must be within the finance department. If those two happen, we'll just cut all the strings. Whatever's allocated is already allocated as the limit in the system. Therefore, you can't spend more than that. If you can't spend more than that, you sign it yourself and keep moving and don't bring it to us. So I think some combination of improvement of efficiency, real-time data tracking, and much improved audit will help us clear a lot of this. Let me finish by saying that in no democracy can you separate money and the politics. Nowhere. Not any country in the world that I know. So the real question is, how do you contain it? Do you contain it? I mean, let me put it a different way. I think when President Obama's re-election campaign came around, back in whatever years ago, it was 8 years ago, 9 years ago, the budget for the re-election campaign was $1 billion. $1 billion didn't come from only people who had no interest in government dealings and no insider trades and no lobbyists and everything. It came from all kinds of places. The question is how much of it comes visibly and with accountability, that the quid pro quo cannot be very aggressive. It can be ambassadorships, but it cannot be contracts for defense or whatever. And I think that balance we have to figure out a way. I would say that except for the last 4 or 5 years, especially after Ms. Jayalalitha died, the rest of the time, of course, corruption exists, but it wasn't the debilitating kind of, what can you say, like soul-sucking, system-destroying, evil corruption that we have seen in the last 4 or 5 years. These guys just don't take it from me. There's a ADMK ex-MP called KC Palanivel, KCP. He has put out one of these interviews recently. I mean, he was interviewed and the video is out on YouTube. I urge you to go look at it. And he explains the different types of corruption there are. And he says there's this kind of corruption that is like election funding. There's this kind of corruption that's like, okay, a bit of it to me, there's that. And then there is Velu money type of corruption, where the whole system is created for him. And the corporations, the corporation of Chennai, Madurai and all that, as I said in my white paper, which had no outstanding dues 5 years ago, now have hundreds of crores of dues outstanding to the EB, to Metro Water, because they have not paid those bills. Instead, they've used the money to fuel the corruption of these guys. And for the sake of doing this corruption, they made sure that the local body polls didn't happen so that there wouldn't be anybody else to prevent the corruption or ask for a cut. I mean, that is just evil. It is pervasive. It is evil corruption. It is unconscionable. It is unforgivable. That we have to stop. That cannot continue. If you say, can you eliminate money and from democracy? It's not possible. There'll be some margin somewhere. You just can't do it. Nowhere in the world, not just in Tamil Nadu.
Very, very candid and forthright, Minister. Compliments.